The Vrexian Empire stretched across 17 star systems, their massive cities carved from purple crystal that caught the light of distant suns. For 4 years, the Empire had been searching for something precious they'd lost. Princess Kara and Princess Nell had disappeared without a trace from the most heavily guarded palace in known space. Nobody could explain it. One moment the sisters were attending a diplomatic function in the Eastern Wing, and the next they were gone. Security footage showed nothing. Sensor logs revealed no anomalies. It was like they'd been erased from existence itself. Emperor Draxon tore the Empire apart looking for his daughters. He fired his entire security force and hired new ones. He brought in investigators from 12 different worlds, each claiming to be the best at finding missing persons. He spent fortunes on psychics, trackers, and technology so advanced it could detect a single molecule of Vrexian DNA across light years. Nothing worked. The first year, everyone believed they'd be found. Ransom demands would come, or spies would uncover a kidnapping plot. The second year brought doubt. The third year brought memorials. By the fourth year, most people had accepted the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. The princesses were dead and they'd never know how or why. Emperor Draxon changed during those 4 years. The kind ruler who'd opened schools and hospitals became paranoid and cruel. He executed advisors on suspicion alone. He imprisoned servants who'd worked in the palace for decades, convinced someone had to know something. The empire that had been prosperous and peaceful began to crack under the weight of his grief and rage. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Earth was making its first serious attempts at interstellar diplomacy. Humanity had only developed faster than light travel 60 years ago. Most alien civilizations saw them as children playing with technology they barely understood. But Earth had resources the older empires wanted, and they were eager to prove themselves on the galactic stage. Ambassador Rachel Morrison drew the assignment to negotiate with the Vrexian Empire. At 42, she'd spent her career handling difficult negotiations. She'd brokered peace between corporate colonies, settled trade disputes, and once talked down an entire mining station from declaring independence. She was good at her job, patient and clever, with a talent for reading people that worked just as well on aliens. Rachel didn't travel alone. Beside her walked Duke, a 5-year-old golden retriever with intelligent brown eyes and a tail that never stopped wagging. Duke was officially registered as her emotional support animal, a certification she'd gotten after a mining accident on Titan left her with severe anxiety in confined spaces. Duke's presence calmed her, helped her focus, and made the endless stress of diplomatic life bearable. What most people didn't know was that before Rachel became a diplomat, she'd worked search and rescue in the Pacific Northwest. Duke had been her partner then, trained to find people buried in avalanches or lost in the wilderness. He'd saved 14 lives before Rachel's career change led them both into space. These days, Duke mostly slept during meetings and charmed alien dignitaries who'd never seen a dog before. The Vrexians found the whole concept bizarre. They had no companion animals in their culture. Bringing a creature to a diplomatic summit seemed unprofessional to them, possibly even insulting. But Earth had insisted it was a medical accommodation under Rachel's disability rights, and the Vrexians eventually agreed. They granted Duke full diplomatic immunity as part of the cultural exchange protocols. The human delegation arrived on a cold morning by Vrexian standards. The palace rose before them like a mountain made of amethyst, glowing faintly in the purple-tinted sunlight. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the entrance, their faces unreadable behind reflective visors. Rachel felt the familiar tightness in her chest as they entered the palace corridors. The ceilings were low by Vrexian standards but still felt oppressive to her. Duke pressed against her leg, sensing her anxiety, and she rested one hand on his head. The warmth of his fur, the steady rhythm of his breathing, it helped. The welcome banquet that evening was a formal affair. Long tables stretched across a grand hall, filled with foods from a dozen worlds. Emperor Draxon sat at the head table, his face carved from stone, his eyes distant. He went through the motions of greeting Earth's delegation, but Rachel could see the broken man beneath the imperial facade. She was trying to engage him in small talk about trade routes when Duke suddenly stood up. His ears perked forward, his body went rigid, and a low whine escaped his throat. Rachel had seen this behavior before years ago in the mountains. This was Duke's alert posture. He'd found something. Duke pulled toward a small servant's entrance half hidden behind a decorative pillar. The door was old, sealed with imperial warnings in Vrexian script. Duke scratched at it, whining louder now, his tail stiff. Rachel felt every eye in the hall turn toward them. Her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, he's never done this before." "Duke, come here." But Duke wouldn't listen. He barked once, sharp and insistent, still focused on that sealed door. Commander Thorne, the palace security chief, approached with obvious irritation. "Ambassador, please control your animal. That area is restricted. It leads to old archive levels, nothing more." Rachel grabbed Duke's collar, but something nagged at her. In all their years together, Duke had never given a false alert. Never. When he said someone was buried in the snow, someone was always there. She made a decision that would change everything. "Commander, I formally request permission to investigate that area. My dog is trained in search and rescue, and this behavior indicates he's detected something. It's necessary to calm him, and it's within my rights as someone with a registered support animal." The request was absurd and everyone knew it. But it was also technically legitimate under the diplomatic protocols both sides had signed. Emperor Draxon, who'd been watching with dead eyes, suddenly laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. "Let her humor her beast. 1 hour, Ambassador. Take your guards and your dog into our dusty basement. Find nothing and perhaps we can return to actual diplomacy." Rachel nodded, her heart pounding. Duke was already pulling her toward the door, toward something only he could smell through cracks and stone. Toward a secret that had been buried for 4 long years. The basement entrance groaned as Vrexian guards forced open the ancient door. Dust cascaded down in sheets, catching the light from their portable lamps. The air that rushed out smelled stale and wrong, like something had been sealed away and forgotten for far too long. Rachel descended the stone steps with Duke pulling ahead, his nose working overtime. Behind them came Commander Thorne and 4 palace guards, their weapons drawn more out of protocol than any real expectation of danger. The human security team followed, led by Lieutenant Kyle Barrett, a former Marine who'd seen action in the colonial disputes and didn't trust the situation one bit. The stairs went down much farther than Rachel expected. The palace above was massive, but these sublevels seemed to stretch into the planet's crust itself. The walls changed as they descended, from the polished crystal of the upper palace to rough-hewn stone that looked centuries older. "These tunnels date back to the First Dynasty," Commander Thorne explained, his voice echoing off the walls. "Nearly 800 years old. We keep them sealed because the structural integrity is questionable. Ambassador, this is truly a waste of everyone's time." But Duke disagreed. The dog moved with purpose, his training from years ago taking over completely. He'd pause at intersections, test the air, then choose a direction with absolute certainty. Rachel had seen this before on rescue missions. Duke was following a scent trail and that trail was getting stronger. They passed through chambers filled with ancient artifacts, old weapons mounted on walls, ceremonial robes preserved in stasis fields. Room after room of Vrexian history, untouched and gathering dust. The guards relaxed slightly, convinced this was exactly what Thorne had promised. Nothing but forgotten storage. Then Duke stopped at a collapsed section of corridor. Large stones had fallen from the ceiling decades ago, blocking what had once been a passage. The dog started digging at the rubble, barking frantically, his whole body vibrating with urgency. "Duke, no. You'll hurt yourself." Rachel reached for him, but Kyle held up a hand. "Wait. Ma'am, look at this." Kyle knelt by the rubble, running his gloved hand along the stones. "This collapse is recent. Maybe a few years old. And it's too neat." This was arranged to look natural. Commander Thorne stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Lieutenant, I assure you this section has been unstable for." "Then why is there fresh ventilation?" Kyle pointed to small gaps between the stones where air was moving. "Something's circulating air behind this wall. Archive rooms don't need active environmental systems." The temperature in the tunnel seemed to drop. One of the Vrexian guards shifted uncomfortably, his hand tightening on his weapon. Rachel noticed Thorne's jaw clench, a muscle twitching beneath his scaled skin. "Clear this rubble," Rachel ordered. "Now." "Ambassador, I cannot authorize," Thorne began, but Rachel cut him off. "You gave us 1 hour and full access. We have 40 minutes left. Clear this rubble." The standoff lasted 5 seconds before Kyle and his team started moving stones. The Vrexian guards hesitated, looking to Thorne, who finally nodded with obvious reluctance. Behind the false collapse they found a reinforced door. Not ancient. Modern, made from the same security-grade materials used in the palace above. It had a biometric lock that still glowed with active power. "Commander," Rachel said quietly, her diplomat voice gone, replaced by something colder. "Why is there a secured, powered door in an abandoned archive level?" Thorne's hand drifted toward his sidearm. Kyle noticed and shifted his stance, ready. The moment stretched thin as wire. Then Duke started barking at the door, the sound desperate and insistent. Through the thick metal, impossibly faint, came another sound. Scratching. From the other side. Kyle didn't wait for permission. He pulled an emergency torch from his kit and began cutting through the lock mechanism. Sparks flew in the darkness. The Vrexian guards backed away, and Rachel saw something in their faces she didn't like. They knew. Some of them knew. The door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The smell hit them first. Unwashed bodies, waste, fear. The stench of long captivity. Kyle swept the room with his flashlight, and the beam caught two figures huddled in the far corner, their arms wrapped around each other, faces hidden. They were painfully thin, their skin pale from years without sunlight. They wore rags that might have once been fine clothing. Their hair was matted and long. But when one of them looked up, squinting against the light after so long in darkness, Rachel saw the distinctive royal tattoos on her neck. The marks that identified Vrexian royalty at birth. Sweet mercy, Kyle whispered. Those are the princesses. Princess Kara tried to speak, but her voice was a broken rasp. 4 years without regular use had stolen her ability to do more than whisper. Her sister Nell clutched her arm, both of them trembling, their eyes wide with an emotion somewhere between hope and terror. Rachel's training took over. She moved slowly, hands visible, voice gentle. Your Highnesses, my name is Rachel Morrison. I'm from Earth. You're safe now. We're getting you out of here. Behind her, she heard Commander Thorne's sharp intake of breath, followed by the distinct sound of multiple weapons being drawn. She spun to find the Vrexian guards pointing guns at her team. I'm afraid I can't allow that, Ambassador, Thorne said, his weapon now aimed at Rachel's chest. You were never supposed to find them. Nobody was. This complicates things considerably. Kyle and his team had their weapons up in an instant, creating a standoff in the cramped prison. Duke growled, placing himself between Rachel and Thorne, hackles raised. You did this, Rachel said, the pieces falling into place. You're the one who made them disappear. Not just me. This was necessary. Thorne's face twisted with conviction. The princesses wanted reforms that would have destroyed our empire's foundations. Open borders with inferior species. Sharing our technology. Diluting our culture. They had to be stopped. So you buried them alive under their own home? The plan was elegant. They disappear, the emperor goes mad with grief, and when he eventually dies we install a proper ruler. Someone who understands tradition, strength, empire. These two were supposed to die quietly down here. You and your animal have ruined years of careful planning. Rachel's mind raced. They were deep underground, outnumbered, with two traumatized princesses who could barely walk. The smart play was to back down, retreat, regroup. The diplomatic play. Instead, she activated her emergency beacon. The signal would punch through the stone, reach her ship in orbit, and trigger every protocol Earth had for protecting its diplomats. You just made a very serious mistake, Commander. Thorne smiled without humor. I don't think so. Tragic accident. The unstable tunnels collapsed during your unauthorized exploration. The human delegation dies, the princesses die, the secret stays buried. Simple. He raised his weapon. And Emperor Draxon's voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by the palace communication system. Commander Thorne, lower your weapon. Now. The Emperor appeared at the tunnel entrance, surrounded by his personal guard, his face a mask of rage and anguish. He'd followed them down, perhaps suspicious, perhaps curious. Now he stared at his daughters, alive, and the man who'd stolen them. My lord, I can explain, Thorne began. You imprisoned my children. Under my own palace. For 4 years. Draxon's guards moved forward. Thorne made his choice. He fired at the Emperor. Kyle tackled Rachel as the tunnel exploded into chaos. Weapons fire lit the darkness. The princesses screamed. Duke barked furiously. And somewhere in the violence, Rachel heard the sound that would haunt her forever. The sound of an empire tearing itself apart. The plasma bolt meant for Emperor Draxon struck the wall instead, melting stone into glass. Kyle had pulled Rachel down a split second before Thorne fired, probably saving both their lives. The tunnel became a nightmare of weapons fire and ricocheting energy blasts that turned the ancient stone into a death trap. Kyle's team returned fire with practiced precision. They'd trained for hostile extraction scenarios, though nobody expected to use those skills at a diplomatic summit. The human weapons, kinetic rather than energy-based, punched through Vrexian armor with brutal efficiency. Rachel crawled toward the princesses, Duke pressed against her side. The two women were frozen in terror, their bodies curled together in the corner where they'd spent 4 years waiting to die. Rachel grabbed them both, pulling them toward the minimal cover of an overturned storage container. Stay down. Keep your heads down, she shouted over the chaos. Emperor Draxon had taken cover behind his guards, who'd formed a protective wall with their bodies. But the tunnel was narrow, and Thorn had positioned his conspirators well. 3 of the Emperor's guards went down in the first exchange, their armor no match for close-range plasma fire. Thorn was screaming orders, his calm facade shattered. Kill them all. The Emperor's been compromised by human influence. For the true Empire. That's when Rachel realized this wasn't just about the princesses. This was a full coup attempt. Thorn and his people had been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. Her stumbling onto their secret had simply accelerated their timeline. Kyle tapped his comm unit. Barrett to Morrison's Pride, we have a military situation. Repeat, Ambassador is under fire from hostile forces. Request immediate tactical support. Above the planet, in high orbit, the human diplomatic vessel Morrison's Pride received the signal. Captain Jennifer Hayes was on the bridge within seconds of the alert, her coffee still steaming in the mug she'd abandoned. Talk to me, she snapped at her tactical officer. Emergency beacon from the surface. Ambassador's security team reports active combat situation. Palace security has turned hostile. Jennifer had commanded warships during the border conflicts. She'd fought pirates in the outer colonies and faced down corporate mercenaries trying to claim disputed asteroids. She knew exactly what happened when diplomats became targets in alien territory. The next few minutes would either prevent a war or start one. Spin up FTL drives. Get me Commodore Walsh on the fleet channel. Now. 2 light years away, Commodore Robert Walsh commanded Earth's 3rd Diplomatic Protection Fleet. 3 warships on routine patrol, close enough to respond if things went wrong at the Vrection Summit. Things had just gone catastrophically wrong. Walsh received Hayes' transmission and made a decision that would echo through galactic history. All ships, emergency jump to Vrection space. Battle stations. Prepare for hostile engagement. The 3 human vessels, Morrison's Pride, Texas Ranger, and Shanghai Protocol, tore through the fabric of space itself. The jump was reckless, dangerous, and completely against standard safety protocols. They could have emerged inside a planet or 2 close to the sun. But Walsh had people on the ground who needed him, and he'd be damned if he'd let them die because of caution. Back in the tunnel, Kyle's team was running low on ammunition. They'd killed 3 of Thorn's conspirators, but more kept coming. Apparently the plot ran deeper than anyone suspected. Vrection guards who'd seemed loyal minutes ago were now trying to kill their emperor. Draxon fought beside his remaining loyal guards, his ceremonial robes scorched and torn. For a civilian ruler, he moved like someone who'd seen combat before. His plasma pistol dropped 2 conspirators trying to flank his position. Princess Kara grabbed Rachel's arm with surprising strength for someone so weakened. The ventilation shaft, she rasped, pointing to a grate high on the wall, leads to the Eastern Gardens. Nell and we planned escape routes, before? Her voice broke, but the intelligence in her eyes was sharp. Even 4 years in hell hadn't destroyed her mind. Rachel looked at Kyle, who was already assessing the shaft. Too small for us in armor, but the ambassador and the princesses could fit. Maybe. Do it, Rachel decided. Get them out. I'll stay with the Emperor. Ma'am, my job is protecting you. Your job is following orders, Lieutenant. Get the princesses to safety. That's a direct command. Kyle wanted to argue, but training won. He started pulling the grate free while his team provided covering fire. Duke whined, torn between staying with Rachel and following the princesses. Rachel pushed him toward Kyle. Go with them, boy. Protect them. Go on. Duke hesitated, then obeyed, disappearing into the shaft with the princesses and 2 of Kyle's soldiers. Rachel picked up a fallen rifle, checked the charge, and joined the Emperor's position. Your people are insane, Draxon said, firing around the corner. Brave and insane. We protect our own. You're our diplomatic partner. That makes you ours too. 3 decks above them, Thorn's forces were trying to seal the palace. They'd activated lockdown protocols, trapping everyone inside. In the throne room, conspirators were making broadcasts claiming the Emperor had been killed by human assassins, that they were securing the palace against Earth's attack. The lie spread through the capital city within minutes. Riots began in the streets. Some Vrextions believed the humans had murdered their ruler. Others suspected a coup. The Empire's military split, with some commanders declaring for Thorn's provisional government, and others demanding proof of the Emperor's death. Then Earth's fleet arrived. The 3 human warships dropped out of FTL directly above the palace, close enough that their sensor shadows darkened the city below. It was a deliberate violation of every diplomatic protocol, a show of force that made the entire Vrexian home fleet scramble to intercept. Captain Hayes opened a broad-spectrum transmission that reached every receiver on the planet and every ship in orbit. "This is Captain Jennifer Hayes of the Earth vessel Morrison's Pride. Our ambassador is under attack by hostile forces within your palace. We are here to retrieve her and any persons under Earth's diplomatic protection. This is not an invasion. This is a rescue. Anyone who interferes will be considered hostile. You have 2 minutes to stand down." The message was simple, direct, and backed by 3 ships whose weapons were now hot and tracking targets. The Vrexian orbital defense grid powered up in response. Dozens of weapons platforms, each capable of cracking a ship's hull, locked onto the human vessels. The Vrexian home fleet, 30 warships strong, moved to intercept positions. On paper, Earth was hopelessly outmatched. 3 ships against an entire planetary defense network. But Hayes had learned something during the border conflicts. Sometimes, looking insane enough to actually fight made fighting unnecessary. "Commodore," her tactical officer warned, "we're being painted by at least 40 targeting systems. Their battlecruiser Dominant is moving to weapons range." Walsh's voice came through on the command channel, calm as ice. "All ships stand by. Do not fire unless fired upon. But if they shoot first, make it count." In the palace throne room, Thorne watched the human ships on the main display and felt his carefully constructed plan crumbling. He'd expected confusion, delay, maybe a strongly worded diplomatic complaint. Not this. Not 3 warships willing to fight an entire empire for 1 ambassador. His second-in-command looked terrified. "Commander, the humans are serious. They'll actually fight. They're bluffing. 3 ships can't." "Sir, our intelligence on human military doctrine suggests they don't bluff. They fought a 15-year war over a mining dispute. They nuked their own colony rather than let pirates take it. These people are crazy." Thorne's hand trembled on his weapon. Everything was falling apart. Below, in the tunnels, Rachel heard Hayes' transmission on her comm unit and felt a wave of relief so strong it nearly made her dizzy. Her people had come for her. Earth had actually challenged an ancient empire to get her back. She looked at Emperor Draxon, who'd heard the transmission too. "Your fleet could destroy them," he said quietly. "Probably. But they'd take a lot of your people with them. And they won't stop. That's what you need to understand about humanity. We don't abandon our own. Ever." The Emperor smiled grimly. "I'm beginning to see why the galaxy fears you." Above them, the 2-minute deadline ticked down. Every ship, every soldier, every person on both sides held their breath, waiting to see if this would become the war nobody wanted but everybody was ready to fight. The 2-minute deadline reached 0, and the galaxy held its breath. 40 weapons platforms, 30 warships, and 3 human vessels all had their fingers on the trigger. 1 nervous operator, 1 misread sensor reading, and thousands would die in the next 60 seconds. Then Emperor Draxon's voice cut through every military channel, transmitted from Rachel's comm unit deep in the palace tunnels. "All Vrexian forces stand down. This is Emperor Draxon. I am alive and ordering immediate cessation of hostilities. Commander Thorne has committed treason. The humans are not our enemies." The transmission was shaky, interrupted by weapons fire as the Emperor ducked behind cover, but it was unmistakably his voice, verified by Imperial authentication codes that couldn't be faked. Confusion rippled through the Vrexian military. Half the fleet began powering down weapons. The other half hesitated, unsure who to believe. In the throne room, Thorne screamed at his communications officer to jam the signal, but it was too late. The lie about the Emperor's death had just been exposed to the entire planet. Captain Hayes didn't waste the opportunity. "Vrexian vessels, Earth has no quarrel with you. We want only our ambassador and the safety of Emperor Draxon. Help us end this peacefully." The Vrexian battlecruiser Dominant, the fleet's flagship, made the choice that prevented war. Its commander, Admiral Corvin, had served the Empire for 40 years and knew a coup when he saw one. His ship's massive weapons swung away from the human fleet and toward the palace itself. "Thorne, this is Admiral Corvin. Surrender immediately or I will reduce that palace to rubble with you in it." Thorne's conspiracy crumbled in minutes. Guards who'd followed him out of loyalty to tradition suddenly found themselves branded as traitors. Some surrendered. Others tried to fight their way out and were cut down by loyalist forces. Thorne himself made a run for the palace hangar, trying to reach a shuttle, but ran straight into Kyle and his team emerging from the ventilation system with the princesses. The former commander went for his weapon. Kyle was faster. A single shot, center mass, and Thorn collapsed against a decorative pillar, his blood staining ancient stone. Princess Kara looked down at the man who'd stolen 4 years of her life. She should have felt satisfaction or relief or something. Instead, she just felt tired. So incredibly tired. "It's over," Kyle said gently, offering his arm to support her. "Your Highness, we need to get you to medical care." Within the hour, Emperor Draxon emerged from the tunnels with Rachel at his side, both of them battered but alive. The palace courtyard was controlled by loyalist forces now, the conspirators either dead or in custody. A human shuttle waited, its ramp down, medical personnel ready. Dr. William Grant, Earth's chief diplomatic physician, took one look at the princesses and started barking orders. They were dehydrated, malnourished, and showing signs of severe psychological trauma. He'd served in field hospitals during the worst of the colonial wars. He'd seen what captivity did to people. These 2 women needed intensive care, and they needed it yesterday. "We're taking them to Morrison's Pride," Grant told the Emperor. "Our medical facilities are better equipped for this kind of trauma recovery." Draxon wanted to argue, wanted his daughters in Vrexian hands, but he looked at their hollow eyes and knew the doctor was right. "Take care of them. Please." The shuttle lifted off, carrying the princesses, Rachel, Duke, and a full medical team. Behind them, the Vrexian Empire was tearing itself apart. News of the conspiracy had spread like wildfire. Citizens demanded answers. The military was hunting down anyone connected to Thorn's plot. 3 regional governors were arrested within hours. A palace minister committed suicide rather than face trial. The empire had fractured along fault lines nobody knew existed. Some systems declared independence, claiming the central government couldn't even protect its own royal family. Others rallied around the emperor, demanding harsh punishment for all traitors. A few military commanders seized control of their sectors, claiming they alone could restore order. Aboard Morrison's Pride, Princess Kara underwent treatment in the medical bay while Princess Nell slept under sedation in the next bed. The doctors had stabilized them, started for nutrition, and begun treating the various infections and deficiencies that came from 4 years in darkness. Rachel sat with Kara, who couldn't seem to stop talking now that she had her voice back. 4 years of silence had left her desperate to communicate, to be heard, to matter again. "We listened to them," Kara whispered, her hand gripping Rachel's with surprising strength. "Through the vents we heard everything. Thorn and his people, plotting our empire's future like we were already dead. We heard Father going mad above us, executing people who had nothing to do with our disappearance. We heard the memorial services. The galaxy moving on without us. But you survived. We survived because we refused to give them the satisfaction. Every day we stayed alive was one more day we denied them their victory." Kara's eyes, still adjusting to normal light, focused on Rachel. "Why did you risk so much? You barely knew us. Earth barely knows our empire. Your ships could have been destroyed." Rachel thought about that. "Because it was right. Because leaving you there, knowing you were suffering, that's not who we are. Humanity learned a long time ago that we're stronger when we stand together. When we protect each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Duke, lying beside the bed, thumped his tail in agreement. Over the next 3 days, the Vrexian Empire bled. 7 star systems declared independence. The military split into 3 factions, each claiming legitimate authority. Riots erupted in the capital as citizens demanded Draxon's abdication for allowing the conspiracy to exist. The emperor, who'd aged 20 years in the past week, watched his life's work crumble. Earth's diplomatic corps worked overtime, trying to prevent the empire's collapse from triggering a wider war. Ambassador Rachel Morrison, recovering from her own ordeal, found herself mediating between Vrexian factions who all wanted different things and trusted nobody. That's when Princess Kara made a decision that would change everything. She was strong enough to sit up now, eating solid food, her voice growing steadier by the hour. Dr. Grant said she was recovering faster than he'd expected. Trauma like hers usually took months or years to process. But Kara had something most trauma survivors didn't have: a burning purpose. "I want to address my people," she told Rachel. "All of them. Every faction, every system. I want to speak." "Your Highness, you're not ready? I'm the only one who can stop this. The Empire is tearing itself apart over me. Let me try to save it." Rachel looked at the young woman who'd survived the unsurvivable and saw something that reminded her of the best humans she'd known. Strength forged in suffering. Compassion born from pain. The will to build something better from the ashes of catastrophe. "Okay, but we do this right. Neutral territory. All factions represented. And Earth mediates." "Agreed." The announcement went out within hours. Princess Kara, alive and recovering, would address the Vrexian Empire from the neutral station Carthage, located on the border between Vrexian space and the independent systems. All factions were invited. Earth would guarantee everyone's safety. The galaxy watched as ships from across the fractured empire began arriving at Carthage. Loyalists who wanted the monarchy restored. Reformers who wanted democracy. Separatists who wanted independence. Military strongmen who wanted order at any cost. All of them suspicious, all of them armed, all of them gathering in one place for the first time since the conspiracy was exposed. Rachel stood in the station's main conference hall, watching the delegations file in, and prayed she hadn't just created the conditions for the Empire's final violent collapse. Behind her, Princess Kara prepared to speak to her people for the first time in 4 years. Everything humanity had built with the Vrexian Empire, every hope for peaceful cooperation, came down to what happened in the next few hours. The conference hall on Carthage Station could hold 3,000 people. Every seat was filled. Vrexian nobles in traditional robes sat beside military commanders in battle dress. Separatist leaders who declared independence weeks ago shared space with loyalists who wanted them executed for treason. The air crackled with tension so thick you could taste it. Rachel stood backstage with Princess Kara, who was dressed in simple medical recovery clothes rather than royal garments. She'd refused the elaborate wardrobe her father's staff had prepared. After 4 years in rags, she said, fancy clothing felt like a lie. They're going to expect me to choose sides, Kara said quietly. The loyalists want me to restore father's authority. The reformers want me to abolish the monarchy. The separatists want me to bless their independence. Everyone wants me to validate their vision. What do you want? Rachel asked. Kara looked down at her hands, still too thin, still bearing scars from years of captivity. I want the empire I dreamed about with Nell before they buried us. The one where we're strong because we're not just because we're old. Where we lead by example instead of fear. Then tell them that. Princess Nell appeared from the medical observation room, still weak but insisting on standing with her sister. Dr. Grant had advised against it, but the look in Nell's eyes had silenced his objections. Some things mattered more than physical recovery. The sisters embraced, drawing strength from each other like they'd done every day in that dark cell. Then they walked onto the stage together. The hall erupted. Some factions cheered, others remained silent, a few actually booed. The separatist delegation started chanting for independence. The military faction demanded order. Rachel watched from the wings, her hand instinctively moving toward the pistol Kyle had insisted she carry. Kara raised her hand and slowly the chaos subsided. When she spoke, her voice was soft at first, still recovering, but it carried through the hall's amplification system with crystal clarity. 4 years ago I disappeared. My sister and I vanished from our home, from our lives, from everything we knew. For 4 years, we lived in darkness beneath our own palace. We heard the Empire search for us. We heard our father go mad with grief. We heard all of you debate what our disappearance meant, what it said about our Empire's strength. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. We survived by making promises to each other in that darkness. We promised that if we ever got out, we would never waste another day. We would never take freedom for granted. We would build the empire we believed in or die trying. A loyalist general stood. Your Highness, we are ready to restore your father's throne, to punish the traitors, to make the empire strong again through traditional values. By traditional values, you mean the values that allowed conspirators to imprison us for 4 years? Kara's voice hardened. The traditions that made our security forces so loyal to the past that they betrayed the future? Those traditions. The general sat down, his face flushing purple. A reformist leader raised her hand. Princess, the monarchy has failed. The emperor system allowed this conspiracy to exist. We need democracy, elected leadership, power distributed. You want to tear down everything during our weakest moment? Nell spoke for the first time, her voice raspy but determined. That won't make us stronger. That will just create more chaos for our enemies to exploit. The reformist looked like she wanted to argue, but Kara continued. I'm not here to choose your side or anyone's side. I'm here to offer something different. A third path. She gestured, and the massive display behind her lit up with Earth's flag beside the Vrexian imperial crest. The humans found us when our own people couldn't. They risked war with an empire 100 times their size to save 2 people they'd never met. What? Because they believed it was right. Because their values demanded they try regardless of the cost. Rachel felt every eye in the hall turn toward her. She kept her expression neutral, diplomatic, but inside her heart was pounding. The Vrexian Empire will enter a formal alliance with Earth, Kara announced. Full cooperation. Military coordination. Technology exchange. Cultural integration. We will learn from them and they will learn from us. Together, we will build something neither of us could achieve alone. The hall exploded in argument. Half the delegations were on their feet, shouting questions, objections, demands. This wasn't what anyone had expected. Alliance with the humans? The species that had barely developed FTL travel? The young civilization that everyone dismissed as primitive? Admiral Corvin, commander of the fleet that had prevented war during the coup, stood slowly. His voice cut through the chaos with the authority of 4 decades of service. The princess is right. I watched 3 human ships face our entire defense network to rescue their ambassador. They didn't blink. Didn't hesitate. That kind of courage, that loyalty, that's what built empires in the first place. Maybe we forgot that. Maybe we need them to remember it. The military faction murmured agreement. Soldiers understood sacrifice, understood standing your ground against impossible odds. They'd seen what humanity was willing to do, and it had earned their respect. Emperor Draxon appeared on the display via remote transmission. He looked older, worn down by guilt and grief, but his voice was steady. My daughters are right. I failed them. I failed the Empire. The conspiracy grew under my watch in my own palace and I was too blind to see it. I cannot continue as Emperor. Gasps echoed through the hall. Effective immediately, I abdicate in favor of Princess Kara. She will become Empress with Princess Nell as her heir and chief advisor. My failure ends today. Their future begins now. The weight of the crown passed in that moment, transmitted across light years from a broken father to a daughter who'd survived hell. Kara's face showed no triumph, only grim determination. My first decree as Empress, she said, is to pardon all separatist systems that rejoin the Empire peacefully within 30 days. No punishment. No revenge. You wanted independence because you lost faith in our government. I understand. Come back and help us build something worth believing in. The separatist leaders looked at each other, shocked. They'd expected execution or war, not forgiveness. My second decree is to establish an Earth embassy on the Vrexian homeworld, with full diplomatic status and permanent military presence. And to commission a monument in its gardens. The display changed again, showing an artist's rendering. Rachel kneeling beside Duke, the dog who'd found 2 princesses when an empire couldn't. The humans have a saying, Kara continued. Not all heroes wear capes. Some have 4 legs and loyal hearts. This dog, Duke, saved the empire with his nose and his refusal to give up. He represents everything we should aspire to be. Persistent. Faithful. Incorruptible. Duke, sitting beside Rachel backstage, had no idea he was being discussed. He was more interested in the treat Kyle was trying to sneak him. But across the galaxy, his image was being transmitted to billions of Vrexians as a symbol of hope. The summit continued for 3 more days. Treaties were negotiated. Systems rejoined the Empire. The military unified under Empress Kara's command. Not everyone was happy. Some hardliners refused the alliance, some reformers thought it didn't go far enough. But the bleeding stopped. The Empire stabilized. 6 months later, the embassy opened on the Vrexian homeworld. Rachel, now Earth's permanent ambassador, attended the ceremony with Duke at her side. The monument was unveiled to crowds of Vrexians who'd come to see the legendary rescue dog. Duke sniffed the statue of himself, decided it wasn't that interesting, and went back to greeting the alien children who'd gathered to pet him. He had no concept of fame or politics. He was just happy to be there, doing what dogs did best, bringing joy to everyone around him. Empress Kara stood with Rachel as they watched Duke charm the crowd. He has no idea what he started, does he? Not a clue. To him, he just found some people who needed help. That's what he was trained to do. Sometimes the simplest actions have the biggest consequences. Kara smiled, the first genuine smile Rachel had seen from her. The galaxy thought humans were too young, too primitive to matter. Then you taught us that age doesn't equal wisdom. That technology doesn't equal strength. That sometimes the newest voice in the room sees what everyone else missed. The alliance flourished over the following years. Earth gained access to Vrexian technology, advancing their civilization by decades. The Vrexian Empire gained human perspective, innovation, and a reminder that power without justice was just tyranny with a crown. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. Human students studied on Vrexian worlds. Vrexian scientists worked in Earth laboratories. The two civilizations, so different in age and origin, found common ground and shared values. 3 years after the rescue, Duke passed away peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by people who loved him. He was 15 years old, ancient for his breed, and had lived every day of his retirement as the most spoiled dog in human history. Empress Kara declared the Day of the Faithful Hound, an annual holiday celebrating loyalty, courage, and the bonds between species. Schools across the empire taught the story of the dog who saved 2 princesses. Children dressed up as Duke for costume parties. His image appeared on everything from currency to spacecraft. Rachel stood at Duke's memorial statue on the day of his death, reading messages from across the galaxy. Vrexian children sending drawings. Human families sharing photos of their own dogs. Alien species Rachel had never even met expressing condolences for a creature they'd only known through stories. He would have hated all this attention, she told Kyle, who'd come to pay his respects. He just wanted treats and belly rubs. Best boy deserves best honors, Kyle said simply. That night, Rachel looked up at the stars from the embassy gardens and thought about everything that had changed. 4 years ago, Earth was just another new species trying to prove itself. Now they were partners with one of the galaxy's great empires. All because a dog had refused to ignore what he smelled, and humans had refused to abandon what they'd found. The galaxy had learned something important. Not about humanity's military strength or technological potential, though those mattered. They'd learned about human character. The willingness to risk everything for what's right. The refusal to leave people behind. The simple, stubborn insistence that every life matters. And they'd learned never, ever to underestimate Earth again. Or their dogs. Somewhere in the palace above, Princess Nell was reading bedtime stories to Vrexian children about a golden dog named Duke who could find anything, even hope in the darkest places. The story would be told for generations, growing into legend, reminding the galaxy that sometimes salvation comes not from the strongest or the oldest or the most advanced, but from the most loyal heart and the simplest act of refusing to give up. Duke's legacy wasn't just saving 2 princesses. It was showing the universe what humans had known all along. The best heroes are the ones who never realize they're heroes at all.